Hi, my name's Jane and I'm the pastor of the Metropolitan Community Church in Glasgow. I'm here with Lucy and we're going to discuss the meaning of abomination and how this word has been used to condemn gay Christians.
So, Jane, there are two passages in the Bible that use the word abomination and are quite difficult and challenging for lesbians and gay Christians. The first is in Leviticus 18, verse 22. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman, it is an abomination. And then in Leviticus 20, verse 13, if a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination. They shall be put to death, their blood is upon them. So I suppose my first question is, what is an abomination?
And it's a good question, and the best place to look is in a dictionary. This is Vine's Complete Expository Dictionary, and it tells us that the word abomination is a translation of the noun tova, which appears 117 times in the Bible. And the first definition that it gives, there are three altogether, is tova defines something or someone as essentially unique in the sense of being dangerous, sinister and repulsive to another individual. So clearly not a word that affirms something or someone. It's also important to go back to when this word first appears in the Bible, and the first appearance of the word abomination or tova is in the book of Genesis at chapter 43. Joseph and his brothers have been reunited after they sold him into slavery. They still don't know it's him, and they're having a meal together. So I'm just going to read chapter 43, verse 32. They served him by himself, and then by themselves. And the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians might not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is an abomination to the Egyptians. So it's not about something that's abominable to God, but it was an abomination to the Hebrews. Now there it concerned food, and a lot of the use of the noun tova concerns food. For example, in Leviticus the Israelites are told not to eat meat that was sacrificed more than 3 days ago. That's an abomination. And they're told not to eat certain birds or reptiles, as these are abominations. So these passages, this word means something sinister, dangerous or repulsive, detestable to another individual.
So what then are the other meanings that abomination may have?
Quite a lot of the time in the Bible, especially the Old Testament, Leviticus and Deuteronomy, the word abomination is used to refer to pagan practices or pagan idols. So again, the Hebrews are told not to bring pagan images into their homes. They're also told that if they have got these images, they're not to touch the silver or gold from these images, for these images are an abomination to God. And in that sense, abomination means idolatry, putting something before God. Tova may also represent the pagan cultic practices themselves, and again particularly in Deuteronomy, and I might come back to this later. Children are sacrificed to the pagan gods, and that's idolatry, and God clearly doesn't approve of child sacrifice.
So how then are Christians supposed to interpret those passages from Leviticus that I quoted earlier?
I think it's important to remember that both Leviticus and Deuteronomy are what's called part of the Holiness Code, in which the Holy God, our Holy God, talks about his love for his people. And in the Holiness Code, spiritual holiness is represented by physical perfection. And for example, the animals used in sacrifice must be perfect. The priests who practice in the Holy of Holies in the temple must be without deformity. Baldness, sores, burns, any of these things are considered imperfections. The reason God makes such strong demands of his people in these times is because of the religious and cultural tension that existed at the time. And God very much wanted to keep his people pure and make sure they were separate from the surrounding nations, including the religions of the surrounding nations. The Canaanites practiced fertility cults. They had fertility gods, and within the temples would be male and female prostitutes, and people would have sex with these prostitutes, representing a bringing together of the heavens and the earth, and thus causing the rain or the sunshine and good crops. Adoption of any of these practices would symbolise Israel's disloyalty to God. Therefore, it's an idolatrous thing to do because it happens within the temples of the cultic gods.
So you're saying that these passages in Leviticus are talking about temple prostitution?
I certainly think they could be, yes. Every good Christian knows you shouldn't just pick a verse and quote it out of context. So it's important to put that verse in the context of the whole chapter. So it starts off, the first 1 to 5 verses of chapter 18 are exactly what I was saying earlier about God wanting to keep his people separate. But then you've got verses 6 to 20, which are all about sexual relationships, and it's all about who you cannot have sex with within your family setting, so your sister-in-law, the wife of your brother, those types of sayings. And then we have verses 21 to 23, so let's put it in context. Verse 21. You shall not give any of your children to devote them by fire to Molech, and so profane the name of the Lord your God. I am the Lord. You shall not lie with a male as with a woman, it is an abomination. And you shall not lie with any beast and defile yourself with it, neither shall any woman give herself to a beast to lie with it. It is a perversion. So it seems that within the whole of chapter 18, you've got this verse 21 that seems to interrupt it. You shall not give any of your children to devote them by fire to Molech. And if the whole of it is about sexual relationships, where does Molech come in? Well, Molech is one of the fertility gods. And the worship of Molech, we know, involved temple prostitution, male and female. So if God wants to keep his people separate, and if temple prostitution is abomination, then same-sex male sexual activity becomes an abomination. It becomes idolatry. Anything that links them to Molech is an abomination.
But is there really any evidence that the Israelites were engaging in pagan practices?
Well, I'm not a historian, but just going on the biblical evidence, there certainly is evidence that some Israelites were selling their children into temple prostitution, which is specifically outlawed in Deuteronomy 23 at verse 17. There shall be no cult prostitute of the daughters of Israel, neither shall there be a cult prostitute of the sons of Israel. So that would imply that because it's been happening, God has now had to say it's unacceptable.
So an abomination is something that God finds detestable because it's either unjust or disloyal or unclean in some way.
Yeah, absolutely. The word tova, as found in the book of Leviticus, is usually used alongside and in association with idolatry. Now, given the strong associations of tova with the idolatrous Canaanite practice of same-sex acts, it does call into question the conclusion that such condemnation applies to modern, loving, caring homosexual relationships.
Okay, thanks very much, Jane.
Thank you.